Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased that you're able to join us this morning for the third episode of our Sharing Management, Business and Personal Challenges from the Pandemic. I'm pleased that so many of you have joined us today. Numbers are growing fast, and that hopefully we will have another interesting and hopefully relevant session which we can help you navigate, I think is probably the best word. Today's session really picks up a lot of the issues that you, as a group of 616 people now from 383 organizations, that's a massive. So what are the issues that you're really focusing on? Continuity and scenario planning, strategies, communications through novel channels, strategies for sustaining client relationships, winning mid to long-term business to sustain the workforce, financial management, billing WIP and collecting debtors, managing non-essential costs, maintaining team productivity, morale, cybersecurity across an insecure network, reputation management now beginning to emerge as an issue, rationing your time to create space for real emergencies. It's all very easy to get caught in the flow, and perhaps for some of us equally important, getting everyone to realize that everybody needs downtime, and that includes you. So thank you for those comments. Thank you for those points. I think that's a reasonably interesting summary, and we as a panel will be attempting to actually address some of those during the course of the next hour. In terms of today, who are we talking? Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome back Jeremy Beard. Some of you will remember that Jeremy came onto the first of these calls. So we're looking at his sort of 2-week video diary. What's been the things that have been happening to him, perhaps the unexpected ones. Francesca, again, welcome back, coming to talk to us about what has been happening in her world over the past week. In third place, Lisa Lister. Welcome, Lisa. She is the organises Yorkshire Leaders, which is a group of managing partners of local law firms. And she's talking about some of the issues they raised at their local roundtable, and also ways to enhance client relationships, which a lot of people see as really, really important, quite correctly. And the last of our formal presenters, Laurence Evans, who is responsible for the Edelman Trust Barometer before starting his own consultancy, and he's looking at why reputation matters and how actually you can make sure you sustain it to the best things possible, given we're all taking difficult decisions at the moment. So that's our sort of lineup of presenters today. Obviously, yours truly completing the mix. And before we sort of start off into the first session, what I'd like to do is to organize a little poll of those who are on the call today, so that we can actually get your sense on some of the key issues that you are thinking about at the moment, and that will hopefully inform our panelists when we're talking a little bit later on their talks. Okay, poll has ended. And from the top, 28% are thinking about no furlough, 13%, 50%, so it's quite a range, and one person, 70%, so that's pretty massive. Sorry, 80%, 90%, really, really high numbers. Slight focus in terms of staff accepting salary reductions, yes, maybe in the middle. Are you planning to refocus? Yes, maybe, but not a huge one. Landlords supportive, banks very supportive, they'll be pleased to hear that. Pension payments, no, it doesn't look like people are thinking about that one. Do you think that it will permanently alter? Very few people, nobody is thinking the old ways will resume. Now that's quite interesting, I think, in itself. And what level of dip are people expecting? 30% is the one that's people are kind of planning for, but the range goes up to 80%. About 7% say nothing. So hopefully that's kind of an interesting set of stats that we've got, which will help inform our discussion. I will now stop sharing, and we will go back to Jeremy, who's going to talk us through how he's found life in the last couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. It's, as Richard said earlier, it's a couple of weeks since I last spoke to this forum, and in many ways it's gone very quickly. In other ways, it seems like a lifetime. I suppose in that regard, it seems like a lifetime because, again, of the number of changes and decisions and challenges that we've had in that period have been huge. I will probably touch on a number of the points that I raised 2 weeks ago and just give an update. So I'll just run through a few of those points. First of all, well-being and working from home and those challenges. Obviously, we've had staff who have fallen ill with the virus. We've had staff who have had stress and anxiety, and that's very understandable for a variety of reasons at this time. And we've had family situations, carer situations, all of those that we've had to manage and deal with. And the key really has been to make sure that we have very good contact with as many of our members of staff as possible. We're a firm of about 350 people. And we're doing that through we have sector groups, we have staff groups, we have departmental groups, and making sure there's lots and lots of contact with our members of staff so that we can deal with their own particular challenges. What has been quite crucial over the last couple of weeks has been getting some visibility with regard to our workload over the coming months. That has been very fluid, but I think we are now getting to a point where we do have a level of certainty. Of course, that it is changing all the time. It's slightly easier in an audit environment than perhaps it is in tax. But we are getting some visibility around that now, which is very useful in terms of enabling us to make some decisions around furloughing and possibly part-time working. We have furloughed some staff already, and that will be an ongoing process as we get more visibility around that workload over the coming weeks. Of course, the challenge with that is around the messaging and communicating to the staff and making sure that we don't cause greater anxiety. Most of our furloughing at this stage has been amongst junior members of staff and our operations team members. With regard to part-time at the moment, and again, this is very fluid, it looks as though we will probably only move to part-time those members of staff who have volunteered for perhaps home reasons, etc. That might change over the coming weeks, but again, we're monitoring that. The messaging to our staff has been really important. As I said, we've got various groups set up that we're making sure we're getting formal messages out, as well as being there to listen and get feedback and respond to that feedback. We are also having a weekly live webinar for all the staff, which I deliver late on a Thursday afternoon for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then issue a written report following that to all members of staff, just giving them an update as to what's been happening across the firm and what actions we're taking. It's important that we get consistency of message as far as possible, even though there are different actions being taken in different departments to respond to those circumstances. Obviously, a biggest challenge over the last couple of weeks has been delivering either disappointing news in terms of withdrawal of promotions, pay rises, etc., and perhaps more worrying news where people are being furloughed or potentially part-time. So that has been a real challenge across the board for us. Clients, we've been working hard at keeping in touch with clients and making contact with them. And I think it's a really good opportunity for us to actually maintain and build on those relationships and really build some goodwill in this time. It might not be hugely rewarding in terms of profit at the moment, but in terms of making contact, improving relationships with clients, it's a really good time to do that. I think I'll probably pause there, Richard, and allow the next person to speak.
Thanks, Jeremy. That was great. Francesca, tell us about your week.
Hello, how you doing? Hope everyone's okay, keeping safe and well. Last week I took you through a few things that we were doing around scenario planning, and as that is the core theme today, I just want to pick up on some more elements of that. And I think probably all of us are in a very fast-moving situation. What was true 10 days ago isn't always true today, but I think still everybody's concentrating, and I'm sure you are too in your business, on your people, on your clients and on your business continuity plannings. And I think those three themes come through incredibly strongly everywhere I look. I deal with offices around the world, and I'm seeing those same three issues come through. Scenario planning is really moving now into that medium term. If I look at scenario planning, there's really three ways of doing it. There's the short term, here and now, can I pay the payroll? Can I keep everything going? There's the medium term, what if this goes on for a couple of months? And there's the longer term, what if this is 6 months of difficult conditions? And I think it's the far horizon is always the hardest. You plan for the worst, you hope for the best. In that scenario planning, I'm going to rattle through some of the things that we're doing, and I'm sure this will resonate with many of you. You start off with the obvious. You identify your risks, but there are also opportunities here, not least around restructuring and insolvency, but also around clients that just need some support. I mean, the furlough scheme in the UK, for example, is not the easiest scheme in the world, and a lot of people are concerned not just about the tax implications or the financial implications, but also very much around the reputational implications of their firm. If they're about to report high profits or strong profits and they start putting people on furlough, how will that play out? Look at how UK football clubs are in the eye of the press storm at the moment around that. Once you've worked out your risks and your opportunities, are they high or low? You may have a lag between the two, but are they high or low risk? What's the real impact and what's the timing of that impact? What are your lead indicators? What are the ones that are going to give you a sense of where everything is going? And what are your lagging indicators like billing and, of course, utilization? What are your mitigation options? That might be around putting people onto reduced hours, voluntary sabbaticals, voluntary part-time work, and then, of course, getting the right data. I think data is king here. What's your real facts? Not what you think. What's really the facts? What's showing up? And then where's your red, amber and green flags? Where's your traffic lights? Where's your problems? Where's your blockers? And then, of course, you keep on communicating. You communicate strongly to everybody in your organization. People fill a vacuum, usually with bad news, not with good. And last but not least, you constantly revisit your scenario planning. So all of the above is going on at the moment. We're doing a lot with our people around voluntary part-time work. We actually are not using the furlough scheme as of yet. That might change in terms of positions of genuine redundancy, but we're not using it as of yet, but we're keeping it under close review. But we are looking at things like the other measures that may be available to mitigate our costs. So, for example, what can we sensibly reduce at this time that won't have a strong impact on our clients, will keep client service strong, that won't have a strong impact on our people, but enable us to mitigate costs as best we can. So lots and lots of planning going on, lots of discussions, and it is, as I said at the beginning, incredibly fast moving. And I think that's the reality for all of us. It's that, I don't know about you, but I'm in daily calls with my senior leadership team, and I'm sure you're in daily calls with your partners and with your colleagues, because it is a 24-hour changeover on many of these issues. So that's my week, Richard. That's what I've been up to, and I'll be happy to pick up questions later.
Yeah, and talking of questions, I did send a chat note. You may have seen, we absolutely encourage your questions. We've got 4 that have come in at the moment, but please send us some more. We've also got all your background questions as well, which I raised at the beginning. So hopefully when it comes to the what I call the fireside chat a little bit later, we'll be able to make sure we cover as many of your questions as possible. Right, Lisa, welcome, Lisa Lister. Come and tell us a little bit about Yorkshire and your gorgeous backdrop, and more importantly, the Yorkshire Lawyer Group that you run and some of the issues that they're thinking through at the moment based on the recent roundtable you organised.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, good morning, everybody. So, yeah, I'm based up here in Yorkshire and predominantly working with the SME space, both in professional services, but also business owners from engineering and manufacturing. Help with growth plans, help with their business development strategies. But we do have some leadership groups that have been running for around 12 years now. We have a lawyer group, 16 law firms, and then we have about 25 SME business owners. And so what I feel that is enabling is we're still continuing with our virtual meetings. And more than anything, I'm seeing that they really value those peer sessions. They're taking solace in sharing and sense checking what they're doing, The old kind of cliche about it being lonely at the top, I think it bears true now more than ever. I think for the law firms that I'm working with, they are still in that operational phase. Hats off to all the business owners, because it's the intensity of those decisions that they're having to make day in, day out, I think is exhausting for them. So yeah, there's still operational issues. I thought it was interesting with your poll that you asked about kind of things like the landlords. Questions that were coming up in our Yorkshire meetings were to do with furloughing, obviously, to do with landlords and how they're treating you, to do with professional indemnity, liquidity, the loans, all those kind of normal things. I feel at the moment there's definitely there's zero tolerance to people not doing what we perceive as being the right thing. And I think that we've kind of got two little buckets in our heads at the moment, maybe. In terms of kind of feeling shafted or feeling supported. And I'm sorry for being kind of blunt in that way, but we're known for that up in Yorkshire. And so things like whether the landlords are, they may be turning off all the heating, but they're still insisting on that 100% payment. That doesn't seem right. But then equally, there's a chance and opportunity for you to kind of step up to plate and go over and above, and feel very supported. And those things are being remembered. And I think when we come out of the other side, those decisions will be based around how they felt at some of the actions of doing the right thing during this difficult period. I think that gets logged and we don't forget it and we act on it when we can afterwards. So in terms of the kind of opportunities, I completely agree with Jeremy. It's about goodwill, really, and really demonstrating that goodwill to clients now. Rich has asked me to kind of talk about how we can enhance that client relationship. And for me, I think now is the time to step up to the plate. So all the marketing, all the values programs that you've been running, all the marketing words that we have, the words like critical friend and trusted advisor, now more than ever is the time to show that. This is when those clients want to feel that support from you, and that kind of give and help as opposed to kind of looking for any business. I thought it would be kind of probably quite interesting to look at one of the issues that was raised by an SME business owner and how they really need your help at the moment. So in the peer groups that we run, when there are solicitors and accountants in it, they're the people that they're turning to for some of these key questions that they want answering. But I don't think they're still floundering around, and I think they would appreciate you reaching out to them even more with those questions that it isn't the obvious questions, it's probably the less obvious questions that they need help with. I know up in Yorkshire we have the Enterprise Partnership, the Leeds Enterprise Partnership. They had 10,000 calls from SME business owners in 2 days. So these people aren't feeling that they're getting the support that they need. And I think that's the space that you can fill for them. And it's being able to, it's getting your accountants and solicitors to have kind of permission, if you like, to make those calls that just say, how are you feeling? How are things going for you as a business owner? What's your main pain point? What's your main challenge? How can we help you with that? And one example I had was of a business owner up here who they make corrugated boxes. They supply some of the key essential sectors. They do have the medical sector, the sanitizer and cosmetics, and the food sector. But they are dropping about a third of their turnover. I saw in that poll, a third of turnover seemed to, a fairly standard drop that they thought they would get. And there's the obvious things that they need from a solicitor or accountant in terms of furloughing questions, debt questions. But it's the other questions that I think we want solicitors and accountants to be asking. Things like, how can we help with the sectors that are thriving? Do we have any medical suppliers we can introduce you to? Do we have lists that we can help you get access to those new markets for? Could we put webinars on to help you immediately rethink your marketing plan because suddenly you've actually got to throw out the old one and get a new one very quickly? Can we help with that? All those extra value things that we talk about added value all the time. Now I think is the time for that. And I think as leaders, you are the enablers. So if you can say to your, I don't know, like the term fee earners, but it's still used. If you can say to your fee earners, don't worry about the targets, but think less about the targets and more about going to your clients and asking those questions, then I think that loyalty, those recommendations will come, and that's really the key role that you've got. You be the enablers and then be the fixers.
Yeah, I love the idea of being enablers and fixers. Thanks, Lisa. That's lovely from gorgeous Yorkshire. If you recall, what we said was in the note that I sent round that there are a number of elements which are kind of new for the HR world, which is, for example, how do you go about furloughing people? How easy is the scheme? It's been mentioned already, it's not that easy. How do you conduct online performance appraisals? How do you onboard new people when you can't sort of, and how do you interview candidates through video? So there's lots of others. So hopefully during the series we'll find, we'll get that HR input. We've certainly got Tim Skipper, who some of you will know, talking next week about some of the messages coming from his HR community. So we may have to do it through that route rather than directly. But anyway, obviously Sally Jane can't be with us today. One point that did occur to me, which was that, and it's an HR issue to one extent, but one of the things I've seen is a lot of growth in vacancies, is probably the wrong word, but the level of jobs being advertised in the tech community, and I mean tech development area, as opposed to helping the tech, has hardly shifted, whereas the more traditional law and accounting vacancies have dropped about 80% over the last week compared with trend. So what I think that's saying is that if you have a business which is like law tech, where people don't need to be sitting in an office but can all work together around the tech, and have got funding behind them, I think that's going to transform the competition much quicker than people thought possible, because that's just very early lead indicators from the vacancy data. But it's quite interesting to see that. I'll send a link around as to where that comes from, so I'm sure people are interested in that. So Laurence, come and tell us a little bit about reputation and why actually at the end of the day, one of the things we possibly should be thinking about a bit more is the impact of everything we're doing on our reputation, as opposed to just the short-term survival stuff, which I think is driving a lot of decisions at the moment.
Yeah, great, Richard. Thank you very much for having me, and good morning, everyone. As Richard said, I'm the CEO of Reputation Leaders, and I'm an SME. And I was responsible for the Edmund Trust Barometer for 7 years before I started my own reputation consultancy. So I'll be looking at reputation and how do you implement difficult decisions and defend and even potentially enhance, as Lisa said, your reputation in the process. One of the key things is, as you all know, reputation is more important now than it has ever been. Even in normal times, reputations take decades to build and moments to lose. And this is particularly true in professional services like yours, where reputation, trusted advice is what you sell, and in many cases, it's the only thing you sell. The good news is that in times of crisis, people look to expertise. That's what Lisa was saying. Show your expertise, and where people can trust you for sound advice. Bear in mind that we're living at a time where public emotions are running very, very high. People are very concerned about their health, their jobs, their anxiety. They're getting used to working from home, whole new environments. And in that environment, egregious examples of bad behavior, such as gouging prices or treating employees badly, or using it as a chance to cut costs by furloughing people when you're at a time of high profits, those will be remembered and those will be punished. So both great acts of kindness, but also bad acts will be remembered for a long time after this. This is the time to actually build your reputation, not to sally it. A couple of good examples. One brand who's done very well in the public's view is BrewDog, the beer, whose founders have not only foregone their salaries this year to protect their workforce, but they've also adapted their production lines to produce sanitizer. The craft brewery opened its virtual bars to encourage people to continue to connect online. And so YouGov's data showed that BrewDog's reputation scores have increased by an impressive 6 points since the 16th of March. On the other hand, there are brands whose public perception has been very negatively impacted by how they've handled the situation. You probably know Mike Ashley, Chief Executive of Sports Direct, had to issue an apology for refusing to close stores after the government ordered all non-essential shops to close. YouGov data showed that 88% of Brits don't consider selling sports equipment to be an essential service, and sports Direct's reputation fell. Wetherspoons also sparked public anger by refusing to close pubs and pay their workforce. That led to a 17-point decrease in their reputation scores. So how do you look after your reputation? The framework we use is what I call the 4 Ps. You look after your product, your people, your purpose, and your profit. But in these times, the public is expecting firms to put people and purpose ahead of profit. That is considered the right thing to do. And importantly, how well you treat your employees is the second most important driver of corporate reputation behind your brand. It's well ahead of sustainability, philanthropy, and financial returns. So employees can be your biggest advocates and your biggest influencers shaping your reputation. If you treat them right, if you provide sound guidance, if you do things fairly, then they will share that with friends, family, social media, and beyond. But the flip side is true. There's evidence that if an employee feels negatively about your organization, they're going to talk badly about you twice as much as an employee who actually loves you. So those kinds of reputations can spread very, very quickly and negatively. So are your employees feeling supported? Well, a recent Toluna report reported that only 20% of UK employees felt that their employer was highly supportive, 9 or 10 out of 10. So Jeremy's points about frequent short communications and about creating small groups of support are really important. So what do employees want from their employer? Well, fortunately, last Friday, we ran in the US a nationally representative poll. We asked that question of workers, what do they expect from their employers? And they told us they expected 3 things. The first was just give us practical help. The second was provide paid time off for non-essential workers. And the third was honest and frequent communications. So picking up on 2 of those things, the first defense of reputation is real action. Some of the things that Jeremy and Lisa were talking about. And that has to be geared towards protecting employees' health and overall well-being. So this could either mean protective gear or helping with work from home technology solutions or support for families with sick relatives or for homeschooling. So to bring this home, in Italy, according to the Reputation Institute, those employers who provided face masks or tangible help found a 5-point increase in their reputation scores, and even just updating the evolving situation increased their image by another 5 points. The second thing is, I'd say about communications is keep your cycles short and real. I don't know about you, but I'm overwhelmed by long 400-word emails from people telling me all about their what they're doing for themselves. And it's like, I don't need to know. I just need to know that you're helping me and you're online. So bear in mind that all communications have to start with empathy, emphasizing concerns for workers. Even bad news needs to be honest and compassionate. So we talk about communicating the why, what, and how, and where of difficult decisions. The why is this decision necessary? It's for survival. It's not just for cost cutting. Secondly, what does it mean for individuals? Start with the WIFM, what's in it for me? Start with safety first and then talk about the work impact. And there are some real questions. How long will I be furloughed? Will I be part-time, etc.? Importantly, Lisa mentioned this, how is it going to be implemented? The fairness of how people are treated will be remembered long after the process of it is finished. Consistency of message. So if people are furloughed and not able to work, how is that work going to be distributed amongst other people in the firm? Is that fair? And the where can employees go for information and support? So in this environment, silence is not golden. Keep your communications short, keep them sweet, and keep them honest. And just to finish off with something from the 2020 Edelman Trust Barometer, the coronavirus special, 79% of employees expect that there will be changes in operations. They are expecting that there'll be remote working, travel bans, events cancelled, and resets of budgets. But a similar percentage, 78%, expected employers to go and protect their workers and to do everything they could to protect their local community. So with that, I'll pass back to Richard.
Real words of wisdom there. Thank you very, very much, Laurence. That was, I think we'll always reflect on some of those points because it's so easy to take the short-term perspective when in reality, you always have to bear in mind the impact you have. And fairness, I think, is a term that comes through, and the point you're making about how people and purpose are now way ahead of profits in terms of the agenda. And going back to our poll where we said, does anybody expect to go back to the ways they were? Not a single person thought they would. That in itself shows that this audience is sanguine about change, which for many professional people is not something they necessarily like very much, but that's another story. One thing I was going to mention quickly before we go into the panel session, had a note from government, just to sort of brief you on that. And again, I covered it in my little note to you yesterday, basically saying that they are really interested in hearing from you. And that's not just queries, but experiences. They really want to help. They're not necessarily always aware of what the issues are, particularly for the mid-sized firms, and many of them on this call I know from mid-sized firms. So what we've agreed, we've been asked to do is to act as a sort of funnel for you. So any comments, queries, points, views, experiences that you have that you would like us to relay to government, and this is to Marcia King, who was on the call last week, and her team, obviously, and they really are the point people into government across not just BEIS, but across government. So please feel free just to drop me an email and we will collate as appropriate and pass it on. And what I'm going to do in the meantime is collate all the various comments and observations. What's interesting is there's so many people are asking how questions. How do I get from A to B? How do I do this? Some people are asking for factual stuff, to what extent are firms doing this, this, and this. And some people are offering opinions, but the how questions more than outweigh any others. And that's, to me, quite unusual for this sector, who typically start and with their expertise and look at ways to share the expertise and aren't in the position of necessarily seeking expertise from others. But we will anyway move on now, if I may, to the panel session. And there are a few questions. I know we've answered a few, but please keep those questions coming in. I'd like to just perhaps ask Francesca a little bit, if I may, pick up one of the questions about the scenario planning and what are you using as the sort of source of your assumptions, if that's the right way of putting it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's lots of internal measures and there's lots of external measures as well. So it's always helpful to start with the external. And I know the person asking the question said, where are you getting that sort of sense of where things are going to go? And quoted things like the FT and the Economist. The Economist Intelligence Unit is really fantastic. There's also some really brilliant research out there that's free, ready, available, which is people taking a view of where the world's going to go. But if I was to generalize a little bit, I'd say some of that external perspective is really falling into two camps. What's happening right now, for which there is data, what's happening in the short term, for which that FT and Economist are quite helpful, and then the far horizon, the third horizon, which these days isn't that far away, which is the 6 months out piece, and what on earth will the world look like. But you can make some good bets on that. So, you know, what's your own, when you're looking at your own practice and picking up very much on what Laurence was mentioning, obviously you want to protect your people and you want to protect your business and you want to protect your clients. And those three elements are absolutely crucial here. So when you're looking at protecting your people, you're trying to make sure there's going to be enough work for them to do and you're going to be able to bring them back into the workforce at a later date when you need them, or keep them working in the workforce at a sensible pace and speed for now. So there's a couple of things that I'd like to flag around that scenario piece. In terms of and it also ties into the F word, which we're using all the time now, the furlough word, which many of us have been looking at in huge detail. Do you want to furlough your people? Do you do that now? Do you do it later? Do you not do it at all? And this ties into with a question that someone's raised, you know, why would you not? And the answer to that be that you may not be able to, because actually the furlough scheme is for people who are at genuine risk of losing their job, and you may need those people. They may be key people in your business. So reduced hours or reduced working might be a better option for them. You then get into that very interesting thing is, would they financially be better off being in full furlough and getting full pay, but actually the rules give them 80% of their pay. So is there a way that you can manage those two things so that people aren't worse off, but are still working and helping your business keep going and helping your clients be served? And then leaping on again back to that question you asked me, Richard, what kind of scenario indicators are people using? Well, clearly there are so much internal information that you are going to have. I know Jeremy referenced the fact that, what's your real utilization in your business? What's your real cash collection? What's the information, not last week, but today? What's your liquidity looking like? What are all those measures that you need to assess how your business is doing? And then rolling them out a little bit. What will happen in 6 weeks' time? What will happen in 6 months' time? Where am I positioned to ride out the storm? And in terms of, is this a 3 month and we're out, or a 6 months and we're out scenario? Well, nobody knows. Nobody knows. You plan for the worst, but you hope for the best. If you go to China and you go to Japan, who've actually been dealing with this since mid-January, many parts of China are coming back into the workforce now. So they began to be really impacted in February, and they're coming back into the workforce now. And that is, but it's not a quick back to work piece as you'd expect. It's a phased return. So some things are coming back on stream, some things are taking a little bit longer. And again, I think that's part of your scenario planning. The tap won't turn back on, it will come back in a phased way. So as you're looking towards all those different indicators, you would imagine that in your planning, you'll be thinking about a phased return rather than a fast return. So I hope that gives something there, Richard.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, one of the things I think is quite interesting about strategic planning is that it gives you something to stress test your strategies against. We hope firms do have strategies. Not all do, I know, but hopefully they do. And if you look at a range of different scenarios, are there some scenarios that you envisage which might mean that your strategy falls over in a really bad way? Or can you actually at least make sure that you don't, what should I say, everything goes wrong, and so that interplay of the scenarios and your strategy is very, very critical, I find. We've got a lovely question just coming from Steve, who talks a bit about, hopefully you all will see it, around, again, it's a reputational piece around partnership profits, this now being the period of the year when partnership profits are being announced, and how will that play off against furloughing staff? I wondered if Lisa and Laurence from our marketing reputations piece might like to address that issue. I don't mind how you want to approach it.
Sure, I'll go first and then Lisa, you jump in. I think people expect leaders to lead by example. So we have, in our own firm, cut directors' salaries, but we have held on to staff. And I think the point about fair is that we're all in this together. So whatever decisions you make, you need to be able to show that senior management are making an equal sacrifice of everyone else. And it's not expected that just the juniors would have to bear the brunt of this. So in that, I think the principle, as we mentioned earlier, of fairness and equity for all is important. Lisa?
Yeah, in the leadership group up here, it was varying, but really I think the partners were expecting to have to take a hit like their employees. I think, again, it's just that transparency, isn't it? It's those communications that are really honest with their staff, and it's all boils down to what you said earlier, it's doing the right thing. Everything in sort of it boils down to that. And if staff feel that that's what the partners are doing, then it's much easier to stomach, isn't it?
Okay. Thanks for that. Excuse me. We've got another question which has come in, which is around cash flow and cash flow scenarios and the extent to which firms are having to stress test or indeed produce cash flow scenarios in a way that possibly they are with a level of uncertainty they're not normally used to. Again, I don't know if Jeremy, if you have any thoughts on that one. So it seems to me that possibly that's an area that you might well be able to help us with.
Yeah, at the moment, I think cash is holding up quite well. We are now producing weekly cash flow forecast looking forward for the next 12 weeks, as well as our normal 12 monthly one, but that's less important at the moment. But we're monitoring it very closely. But at the moment, and this is certainly a feeling I've got from conversations with other firms as well, cash at the moment is holding up quite well. I think we expect that will start to change over the next week or so. But we've put in place as many measures. I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago when I was on this forum, you know, the initial thing we did was to put in place as many measures as we could to protect cash for the short to medium term, and whether that is moving our rent from quarterly in advance to monthly in advance, deferring various other payments or what have you. But that was almost, from a financial point of view, that was our first priority. But at the moment, cash is holding up reasonably well, and the forecasts are okay for looking out for the next 12 weeks or so.
Jeremy, just so I can pick up on that. I mean, are you finding that partners obviously are usually the key people to collect cash to make sure they build a WIP and stuff like that? I mean, is that something that you find your partners are feeling a bit awkward about, being more aggressive towards clients?
I'm trying to. No, I don't. I think it depends on the client. Sure. We are sympathetic to difficult situations, obviously, but at the same time, we need cash to run our business. So I think partners. I think, and just coming back to the poll that you ran earlier, and changes for the future. Certainly, we have an emphasis now on billing weekly. We're going to be starting to really push that hard with partners to get bills out on a weekly basis where work has been completed, rather than leaving it till the end of the month. And of course, that has an impact on the cash collection as well. So we will certainly be pushing on that, and I would hope that that good habit will continue when we come out of this current situation. So I look, it is difficult in some circumstances. We want to be supportive of clients, but at the same time, we have our own business to run, and we need the cash flow as well. So it's, you know, it's a balancing act. But we mustn't shy away from looking to collect our debts on a timely basis.
Thank you. That's great. I mean, this question is probably more for Francesca and possibly Jeremy as well. One of the issues is where you have a client that is a service business, then they probably are able to work from home in many situations. But there'll be other contexts. There's a question here about the construction world, where actually the work can't be done by somebody at home, or the audit team has to physically go somewhere, stock take, whatever it happens to be, something in order to actually be able to form their judgment on the reliability of the accounts. And that involves them going into places which are closed down. So how are you coping with non-service or the more manufacturing and sort of construction side of life and those sort of clients where your services require your people to go out and actually do things?
Yeah, I think it'd be fair to say it's a little bit challenging, Richard. There's some things that are really hard to do when you aren't physically going to a client. I mean, the obvious one is stock taking for audits, of course. And, you know, you might be able to whiz a drone in there, but if the people aren't actually at that site and your people can't get to that site, what do you do? And I know there's some very thoughtful things happening around how you can tackle that in a slightly different way. But the key is to keep up quality. You don't want to reduce your quality to get a result that you don't want to stand behind. You want to be absolutely sure that your quality is right. And all the, just speaking to the audit piece, all the accounting bodies are looking, or the regulators are looking at how can you make sure quality is maintained when some things are just really, really difficult. And I don't think there's a simple answer to that. So what you're seeing at the moment is more of a case-by-case scenario. Are there workarounds? Are there ways that people can get comfortable with issues? Can you deal with some elements in a different way? And then also seeing, do you have to make a decision right now? Or are you able to push it off a little bit in the hope that things get better? So a classic example is you go outside of the UK, in some of the countries which have been impacted by the virus for longer, they have pushed back filing deadlines, they have pushed back reporting deadlines in the hope that they will be able to do that absolutely essential on-site piece actually on site because restrictions will have been lifted or partially lifted. Interestingly, I was chatting to one of my colleagues in the Channel Islands, and some financial service experts have a special pass to be able to travel because it's such an important part of the economy of those countries, so that they can do some on-site elements. But each country has got very different rules and regulations around this. So again, you have to look at the local rules too.
I can see a situation in the world where our passports will need to stamp whether we are COVID free or not, and a bit like in China, apparently if you are sort of a COVID person, your phone goes red, and then the police can work out who you are. It's quite scary what this new world may look like.
Your mobile phone's your passport.
Exactly so. Lisa, do you have any thoughts on helping clients, particularly amongst your manufacturing SMEs who can't even get into their own works, and how you can help them?
Yeah, I mean, interesting from the solicitor's point of view, they've had to be quite innovative, particularly from the private client side. So I know I've heard all sorts of, they're not amusing stories really, but they're kind of bizarre stories, if you like, of particularly things like powers of attorney and having to, doing wills and things in the back gardens, through windows, through letterboxes, in car parks. But they're kind of they're finding working ways around it. For the manufacturing clients, they've been thrown into total disarray. We've had some who thought they needed to shut up shop and did, and maybe got 80 odd people back home, and then were told, do you know what, you can keep going, or you've got some essential, something in the supply chain that is deemed essential. So then they're kind of changing to shifts and trying to still keep the distancing in the factories. And then they've asked the questions about the furloughing right at the beginning. They're becoming clearer now, but can we furlough 1 week on, 1 week off to do shift work, and all those kind of questions. So I feel like to start off with, in the first weeks, I felt like they were having some of the hardest decisions because they had a mix. That almost the ones that were office staff, it wasn't fine, but it was more explained in detail, and they can just work from home. But the people on the shop floor, that was really tricky to work out what to do. And one of their dilemmas, from a very sort of human point of view, was what if they didn't want to come back, but they weren't furloughed, but they were scared, and they didn't want to come back to that shop floor environment. And some of those employment questions were quite tricky, really, because the owners were, they want to do the right thing for their staff. They understood all those anxieties, but if they were sticking to rules, then they just needed them back, and they needed the throughput to happen in the factories. So tricky, but everybody's being innovative and being flexible and kind of getting on with it somehow. That's that's what's coming out, the great things of workarounds that you kind of have to admire. Everyone thinking on their feet every day, really.
Well, that's probably why we're a flexible race. We've survived. One question has just come up now, which you're about to see, is around holiday and the extent to which holiday is meaningful when people are being furloughed. But more importantly, what about accrued holiday? What about holiday? Are you forcing people to take holiday over the summer so that not everybody is away at the same time? Jeremy, have you got any thoughts on holiday? I appreciate that we haven't got an HR person on the call, so that may be a bit unfair, but is that something you've been looking at too?
Indeed, Richard. I was just typing a response to it, but I can give a verbal response now. Yes, certainly we are looking at it. It's very difficult and quite sensitive. And again, in my message out to the staff yesterday, the key message around this was, look, we hope that once a level of normality returns, we will be very busy. And we need to ensure that we have all our workforce back and available at that time, and can keep everyone occupied. So we are looking at it. It is difficult, it's sensitive, a combination of perhaps insisting that people take a certain amount of holiday by, say, the end of July. We are considering, and of course there's good well-being reasons for them to do that as well, and then we will probably retain the right to the extent that we can to keep holidays to a minimum in that latter half of the year when we hope we will be very busy. Of course, there is also the flexibility now around the ability to carry more holiday forward into the future, which we will be flexible around as well. So the key driver from a business point of view is to make sure we've got our workforce available for that second half of the year when we hope we will be really, really busy. And that's protecting the business, and it's how we manage that in the best way, whilst recognizing that it's unfortunate at the moment, staff can't go away, can't travel, etc.
Right, okay, thank you, Jeremy, that was great. I mean, we're in the last few minutes now, so I was just going to kind of ask each of the panelists if they can quickly kind of tell me what they see as what's your number one priority for the next week?
Go on, Richard, I'll jump in. Priorities for next week, continuation around managing our people, our clients and our business. But the most important piece, I think, coming up in the current week is just giving some comfort to people around where their roles are, their security. Many people are now getting nervous about what the impact's going to be for them slightly longer term. So continue to give comfort around that. And business resilience, continual concentration on the key indicators that you need to keep your business resilient at this time.
It sounds more like 3 than 1, but it's all good. Excuse me. Laurence, what's your priority?
Cash flow, communications, and showing clients value, which is my 3 in 1.
Awesome. All good. Lisa, you can have 3 as well if you want. That's fine.
I think for me, it's helping the leaders help their staff when we move into this next phase, which I think is going to be less internal and more external. I think all the operational stuff will start feel more normal. And so it's helping them have some different guidelines as to how they can go to clients and be asking those meaningful questions that will make them feel supported.
Jeremy, what's your priority?
I suppose the number one priority probably this coming week is just our scenario planning and sort of financial modelling. What if this happens? What if that happens? And also just making sure we keep our communication very clear with our staff and provide as much reassurance as is possible in these uncertain times.
Well, we've heard from 4 people and they've all got sort of the same set of priorities and at the same time a little bit different. I think my priority is to disengage and to make sure that I spend a lot of time in the garden and take the dogs for a walk and stop worrying about everything, because at the end of the day, we have to keep ourselves sane and we can just get too much into this stuff. So that's my priority, I think, for next week. And I can do the gardening bit. It's nice weather of the weekend, apparently. Anyway, we're kind of now coming quickly to the end. So I'll just quickly talk a bit about what next steps. Firstly, thanking our panel hugely for Lisa, Laurence, Francesca and Jeremy, for your time, for your hard work and your energy, because it does take time to distill your thoughts into 5 minutes. 20 minutes is actually much easier. 5 is much tougher. So thank you for taking that time. And I think the people who actually who aren't on this call, it's all being recorded, as you're aware. And what we're doing is we're showing it on the management library, which I think a number of you have now visited. But this is basically how it works. You've got the sharing challenges, which is today's, and then separately you've got the Hear from Experts, which is taking place. And the next one of those is actually coming on Monday, when we're talking about, guess what, scenario planning. So hopefully you'll all be listening in for that. And that's Gerald Drent of Norman Partners, who I think are one of the global experts in that area. And then we've also asked Laurence to come back and talk about reputation management a little bit after Easter. There will be some other ones as well, but that's something that hopefully you will all find interesting and useful. And again, as always, I hope you found it valuable. And please encourage not just your peers, your colleagues and others to register for future episodes. We now have people in America, in Canada, in South Africa, in Australia, across the world, who are finding these valuable. And part of it, I think, is just the honesty and the sheer sort of, yeah, we're all in this together, let's share, because actually at the end of the day, that's how will help us all get to a better place. So on that happy note, thank you again, panel, and we will be all in touch. Next week, it's Thursday, not Friday, because whilst Easter may not feel any different, technically, Easter Friday, or when it's Good Friday, is a holiday. So let's not forget that and enjoy it. Bye for now.